No one at La Gastronomica, Madrid's most exclusive restaurant, frequented by Spain's elite, could have imagined that a simple waitress was about to uncover a secret buried for more than 2 decades. Least of all, Eduardo Mendoza, a 52-year-old hotel tycoon, dining alone at his usual table by the window, eyes lost in the night. Eduardo wore a perfectly tailored Italian suit, but it was the ring on his hand that drew attention. An antique white gold piece, set with a deep blue sapphire, surrounded by diamonds, a family heirloom, a symbol of eternal love, one of only 3 rings crafted by his great-grandfather in 1890 for his 3 sons. One was on his finger, one had disappeared years ago, and the third was supposed to be buried with the woman he had loved the most. "Would you like more wine, Mr. Mendoza?" asked a soft voice. Eduardo looked up. In front of him stood a young woman with large eyes, a steady gaze, and a timid smile. Her name tag read, Sofia. "Yes, please." As she filled his glass, her eyes locked onto the ring. Something in her expression changed. Eduardo noticed. "Is something wrong?" he asked. "Excuse me, sir, but that ring, my mother has one exactly like it." In that instant, Eduardo's world stopped. If this story already has you hooked, subscribe now, and tell me in the comments. Do you believe in coincidences that change lives? What's about to unfold will leave you breathless. Eduardo stared at the young woman. He felt his heart pounding out of rhythm. A ring just like his? Impossible. That ring had no replica. "What did you say?" he asked, his voice barely steady. Sofia hesitated. Her hands trembled, but her words came out clearly. "My mother has worn a ring like that for as long as I can remember. It's identical, even the details." Eduardo looked away, bringing his hand to the ring. The memory hit like lightning. His brother Carlos, who died 25 years ago in a climbing accident. Carmen, his beloved wife, who had supposedly died in a car crash 5 years ago. And this ring, one he had never taken off. A wave of dizziness swept over him. There were only 3 such rings, one on his finger, one lost, and one buried. "What's your mother's name?" he asked softly. Carmen Ruiz." The air vanished. Eduardo felt a buzzing in his ears. Carmen, the same name, but his Carmen had been Carmen Mendoza. She had died. He had mourned her, buried his heart with her. "How old is your mother?" 47. Eduardo turned pale. 47. The exact age Carmen would be today. "Sir, are you okay? You look really pale." Eduardo inhaled deeply. Every part of him screamed that this couldn't be a coincidence. "Could you show me a photo of your mother?" he asked, tension in his voice. Sofia nodded. She searched her phone and handed it to him. Eduardo took it with trembling hands, and when he saw it, the world stopped. It was her, Carmen, alive. Eduardo stared at the screen as if witnessing a miracle. It was Carmen, without a doubt. Her face had changed with time. Her hair was shorter, but her eyes were exactly the same ones he remembered during his loneliest night. The tilt of her head, the curve of her smile, the way she looked at the camera. It was her. "Where does your mother live?" he asked, barely above a whisper. "In Cuenca," Sofia replied. "Do you know her, sir?" Eduardo stood up so abruptly his wine glass fell to the floor. Other diners turned their heads, but he didn't notice. His world had just shifted. "I need to know everything about your mother," he said urgently. Sofia stepped back, alarmed. "What's going on? Who are you really?" Eduardo struggled to steady his breath. "I'm sorry, it's just that your mother looks too much like someone I once loved. My mother's name is Carmen Ruiz. We've lived alone as far back as I can remember. She used to work as a secretary until she retired 2 years ago. And your father? I don't have one. My mother says he died when I was a baby. A work accident." Eduardo felt like the ground beneath him shifted. A work accident. He had faked his death in one just over 23 years ago, to escape with Carmen. "When's your birthday?" he asked, a knot forming in his throat. "March." Why? Eduardo did the math. Exactly 9 months after the last time he saw Carmen alive. "My God," he murmured. Sofia could be his daughter. If this story is already touching your heart, don't forget to comment, like and subscribe. Do you believe destiny always finds a way to reunite what time has separated? There's still so much to uncover. Keep watching. Eduardo looked at Sofia with new eyes, now that he really paid attention. Yet, she had his nose, the shape of his eyebrows, even the hands, long and graceful, just like Carmen's. A wave of realization swept over him. Carmen might still be alive, and Sofia could be his daughter. "Did your mother ever mention someone named Eduardo?" he asked, his voice barely audible. Sofia frowned, thoughtful. "No. Well, sometimes, when she's had a bit of wine, she mentions someone named Eduardo and gets sad, but she never talks about him." Her words struck him deep. How many nights had Carmen cried in silence, carrying the weight of a past she never dared to explain? "I have to see her, tonight, right now." Sofia stared at him like he had lost his mind. "Now, sir, it's 10 at night. Cuenca is 2 hours away. I don't care. Call her. Tell her I'm coming. Tell her Eduardo Mendoza is alive." "Sir, you're really scaring me. Who are you?" Eduardo took a deep breath. He had to calm down. He couldn't mess this up. Not now. "Sofia, what I'm about to say may sound unbelievable, but I think your mother is my wife. The woman I thought died 5 years ago." Sofia stepped back stunned. "My mother isn't married. She lives alone. She's never had an accident. She's fine." Eduardo removed the ring from his finger and showed it to her. "Does your mother's ring look like this?" Sofia examined it closely and froze. "It even has the same engraving inside. Eternal love." How? Eduardo's heart raced. Only he and Carmen knew about that inscription. "I need to see her. Tonight. Come with me. I'll pay you 1,000 euros. Sofia studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay, but if you turn out to be crazy, I'm calling the police." Eduardo smiled for the first time in years. "If I'm crazy, call whoever you want." The Audi's engine roared as they sped down the highway toward Cuenca. It was 11 at night, and the road stretched endlessly beneath them. Eduardo kept his eyes on the road, but his mind was racing, replaying every memory, every doubt, every moment with Carmen. Sofia, sitting in the passenger seat, glanced at him from time to time, still tense though curiosity was slowly overpowering her fear. "Can you please explain what's really happening?" she finally asked. Eduardo inhaled deeply. 5 years ago, I was told that my wife, Carmen Mendoza, died in a car accident. But when I saw the photo of your mother, I realized she's alive. Everything matches. Her face, her age, your birthday, even that ring." Sofia remained silent. The air inside the car was thick, almost suffocating. They arrived in Cuenca at 1 in the morning. The city slept under a cloudy sky. Sofia directed Eduardo to a modest building in the old quarter. They climbed the stairs in silence. Each step was a battle for Eduardo, trying to control the storm inside him. In front of a white door, Sofia knocked gently. "Mom." Seconds passed, each one an eternity, until the door opened. And then, the world stopped. Carmen stood there in a bathrobe, her hair tousled from sleep, and her eyes puffy. Eduardo felt the air leave his lungs. The woman he had loved, mourned, buried in his heart, stood alive before him. "Hi, Carmen," he whispered. Her eyes widened. The color drained from her face. "Eduardo." Sofia turned sharply to her mother. "Is it true? Is he my father?" Carmen covered her face with her hands, her shoulders Then, in a low voice, she murmured, "Come in." It was only a matter of time before this day came. The small apartment living room was dimly lit. Carmen slipped on a jacket over her robe and sat facing Eduardo. Her eyes, swollen from tears, studied him as if she couldn't believe he was really there. "How long have you known I'm alive?" Eduardo asked, voice trembling. "I never believed you were dead," Carmen replied. "Not for a second." Eduardo Then, why did you fake your death? Why did you disappear? Carmen looked down. She drew a deep breath. "Because I found out what you were really involved in. The business with Raul Vasquez, the money laundering, the threats." The name hit him like a hammer. Raul Vasquez, a ghost from his past, a mistake that had cost him more than he ever imagined. "How did you find out?" "He followed me. He told me himself. He showed me proof. He said that if I didn't disappear he'd get rid of both of us." Sofia watched them, not understanding. "Who is Raul Vasquez?" "A criminal," Eduardo said bitterly. "Someone I never should have done business with. He offered me a deal," Carmen continued. "If I faked my death and disappeared, he'd leave you alone. But if I stayed, we'd both be dead. I was pregnant. Eduardo, 2 months. I couldn't risk our baby's life." Eduardo turned to Sofia, his daughter, A hidden miracle after more than 2 decades. A knot rose in his throat. Why didn't you tell me? Because you would have tried to stop me, and we would have all ended up dead. Sophia stood up abruptly. Her face was a mix of fury, pain, and disbelief. So you're telling me I've spent 23 years living a lie, that my life has been made up? Carmen stood as well, her voice shaking. I did it to protect you, to protect him, to protect us. Protect me from what? From the truth? You told me my father was dead, that I was an orphan. I've grown up believing I was never enough for him to stay. Eduardo slowly rose and approached her. His eyes were filled with remorse. Sophia, I'm sorry, if I had known you existed, if I had known Carmen was alive, and what would you have done? She asked, her voice cracking. Carmen stepped in. Raul was watching us. He threatened to kill us if I contacted Eduardo. And for all these years, I've lived with that fear. Every single day. When did that fear go away? Sophia asked, eyes shining. 5 years ago, Raul died in a gang war. I saw it in the news. We were finally free. Then why didn't you come back to him? Carmen lowered her head. Too much time had passed. I thought you'd moved on. And I wasn't the same woman anymore. Still standing, Sophia walked toward the door. I need air. I need to. She left the apartment without looking back, leaving Eduardo and Carmen in heavy silence. Carmen collapsed onto the couch. Eduardo sat in a chair, his gaze fixed on the floor. Outside, the city slept. Inside, the past and present collided with full force. The silence left after Sophia's exit was suffocating. Eduardo and Carmen remained seated, neither daring to speak. There was so much to say, and at the same time, nothing felt enough. She looks like you, Carmen finally said, a faint smile forming. Eduardo looked up. And she's got your fire, that way of staring straight into your soul, and not backing down. Carmen nodded slowly. She took off the ring from her finger and placed it on the table, gently sliding it toward Eduardo. I suppose I should return this. Eduardo shook his head. That ring was always yours, and always will be. It belongs to you. She looked at him with teary eyes. After your death, I thought about reaching out, but everything was so confusing. I felt so broken. I thought if I showed up, if I reappeared, you'd hate me for leaving. Eduardo leaned in, his voice low but steady. After you vanished, I sold everything. I shut down the dirty business, walked away from Raul, from power, from money. He had already taken the only thing that mattered. You. Carmen blinked, surprised. You gave it all up? Everything. I kept only what I needed to live. Building an empire meant nothing without you. For a few seconds the past seemed to melt away like mist in the sun. Eduardo took her hand gently. Carmen, I know it's been years, but do you think we could try getting to know each other again? She didn't answer right away. She looked at him for a long time, as if trying to recognize the man she once loved, and discover the one now before her. Maybe, she murmured, we're not the same people we were 25 years ago, but maybe that's exactly what we need. The door opened quietly. Sophia returned, her eyes still red, but there was no longer anger on her face, only calm determination. Carmen and Eduardo turned toward her as if the air had returned to the room. I've been thinking, she said in a low but firm voice, and I've decided I want to get to know my father, but on my terms. Eduardo stood, nervous. Of course, whatever you want. First, she said clearly, no more lies, ever again, I promise, Eduardo said without hesitation. Second, I want to get to know your life, but slowly. I can't absorb 20 years of history overnight. Of course, Carmen said, placing a hand on her shoulder. And third, she continued, looking Eduardo in the eye, I want you to promise me you'll never again put business before family. Eduardo swallowed. The promise was simple to say, but massive in weight. I swear to you, Sophia, in these 5 years I've learned that all the money in the world means nothing without the people you love by your side. She stared at him in silence, then nodded. Okay, we can try. Carmen stepped forward and hugged them both. For a moment all the lost years seemed to dissolve between their arms. No one said anything for a while. They just stayed there, the three of them, feeling for the first time what it truly meant to be a family. A faint sunrise crept through the window. Outside, the world remained the same, but inside that small apartment, something had begun to heal. Eduardo closed his eyes. For the first time in years, he felt hope. 6 months later, the terrace of Eduardo's most luxurious hotel in Valencia was adorned with lights, flowers and warm smiles. That night, they weren't just celebrating Sophia's 24th birthday, they were celebrating something deeper, the reunion of a family fate had once torn apart. Sophia looked at herself in the mirror, wearing the blue dress Carmen had gifted her that morning. The fabric hugged her perfectly, and around her neck hung an old necklace that had once belonged to her grandmother. "How do I look?" she asked, turning to her mother. "You look beautiful," Carmen replied, tucking a stray hair behind her ear. "Like a queen." Eduardo approached with a small velvet box in his hands. "Sophia, there's something I want to give you." She opened the box gently. Inside was a rose gold ring, with a design reminiscent of the family's legacy, a sapphire in the center, surrounded by small diamonds. It wasn't one of the original three, but clearly part of the same story. "I had this made especially for you," Eduardo said. "It's part of the family tradition, but this one is only yours." Sophia stayed silent, her gaze fixed on the ring. Then, with tears in her eyes, she slipped it onto her finger. "Dad." It was the first time she called him that. Eduardo felt his soul fill with light. "I love you, my daughter." Carmen joined the embrace. It was a moment none of them could have imagined a year ago. During dinner, Sophia stood to give a toast. 6 months ago, I believed I was fatherless. Today I have a complete family. It hasn't been easy, but I believe the best families aren't born perfect. They choose to build together. 3 years later, Eduardo and Carmen remarried. This time, it was a small intimate ceremony. No press, no excessive luxury, just close friends, and of course Sophia, who served as maid of honor and walked her mother down the aisle. In those 3 years, Eduardo had transformed his life completely. He had transferred most of his hotels to a charitable foundation, keeping only 2 for a comfortable living. The foundation, now led by Carmen, was dedicated to helping families separated by hardship, women fleeing violence, parents reuniting with lost children, and sons and daughters reconnecting with their roots. Sophia had graduated with honors in hotel management. Eduardo had paid for her education, but it was her effort, drive and talent that earned her the position of general manager at one of the family hotels. Every day, she proved she had inherited not only her father's business sense, but also her mother's compassion and strength. One night, as they sat on the terrace of their home outside Madrid, Sophia raised her glass. "Do you know what's the strangest part of all this?" "What?" Carmen and Eduardo asked in unison. "That everything started because I recognized a ring. If I hadn't been working at that restaurant that day, if I hadn't noticed the ring on your hand, Dad, maybe we never would have found each other." Eduardo took both their hands. "Fate has mysterious ways of bringing together those meant to be." Carmen smiled. "Sometimes the most precious things appear when you've stopped looking." And Sophia added, "And happy endings sometimes show up disguised as coincidence." The story of the Mendoza Ruiz family, as many in their inner circle began calling them, didn't just transform their own lives, it began to resonate with others. Carmen, through the foundation, became a symbol of resilience. The woman who faced danger, chose to protect a life over protecting a lie, and years later, helped other mothers heal. In every university lecture and leadership forum, Sophia shared fragments of her journey. "It all started with a ring," she would say, and audiences would fall silent, because behind her success, the Mendoza name, and 5-star hotels, lay a simple truth: family love can get lost, but it can also be found. Eduardo had changed. He was no longer the rigid tycoon who thought only in numbers. Now he enjoyed breakfasts with his daughter, long walks with Carmen in El Retiro, quiet afternoons, holding hands. Every day felt like a gift he never thought he'd receive again. One morning, in the foundation's office, Eduardo saw a framed photo on the desk, him, Carmen, and Sophia, laughing at a summer fair. "That smile of yours doesn't look like someone who lost everything," Carmen said softly. "No," he replied. "It's the smile of someone who realized that what mattered was never really lost. It just waited until we were ready to find it again." One autumn afternoon, as they walked through the hotel gardens, Sophia stopped and looked at Eduardo. Her eyes were filled with something she hadn't revealed before: vulnerability. "Dad, there's something I've never told you." Eduardo frowned, concerned. "What is it?" "For years I dreamed about you. I didn't know your name or why I felt your absence.
But every time I saw a little girl with her father at school or in the park, I felt a hole inside me I couldn't explain. Mom told me you were dead, so I grew up thinking I had to be strong, that I couldn't cry over someone I never knew. Eduardo looked at her, eyes filled with emotion, his throat tightened. And yet, you were crying for me. Sophia nodded. Always, even without knowing who you were. He stepped closer and embraced her. I wish I could give those years back to you, but I wouldn't take them, she said softly, because if I did, I might not be the woman I am today, and you wouldn't be this man. Carmen, watching from a few steps away, smiled quietly. There was something deeply healing in that scene. A daughter who had forgiven, a father who had changed, and a woman who had survived for love. That night, Sophia wrote in her journal, "Today, I understood that forgiveness isn't forgetting what happened. It's accepting that we deserve to write new chapters, even if the first ones hurt, and this chapter doesn't hurt anymore." A month later, during a quiet dinner at home, Sophia broke the silence with an unexpected idea. "Mom, Dad, I've been thinking, I want to turn one of our family hotels into something different. Not just a business. I want it to be a space for broken families, a place to reconnect, like us." Eduardo looked at her, surprised. Carmen smiled proudly. "Do you mean like an emotional retreat center?" he asked. Sophia nodded. "Yes, with family therapy, reconnection activities, rooms named things like forgiveness, reunion, hope. I want people to know, just like we did, that they're not alone." Carmen took her hand. "That would be beautiful." Eduardo stayed silent for a moment, then he raised his glass. "If you've taught me anything, Sophia, it's that the past doesn't condemn us, it prepares us. And if we can turn our pain into purpose, then it was all worth it." Days later, they began planning in earnest. Eduardo offered one of his hotels in Asturias, surrounded by mountains, ideal for a healing sanctuary. Carmen would lead the therapeutic program through the foundation. Sophia would serve as general director. They named it the House of Reunion, and in just 6 months, the first families walked through its doors, carrying stories like theirs, daughters reuniting with lost fathers, siblings, estranged for decades, mothers silenced by fear, walking out more whole than they came in. As Sophia said, when love finds the road home again, everything starts to make sense. The House of Reunions quickly became more than a hotel. It was a refuge, a sanctuary. Every room told a story. Every visitor left an anonymous letter in the lobby's mailbox, which Sophia and Carmen read together once a month, in silence, often with tears. One night, Eduardo found Sophia sitting on the terrace, holding one of those letters in her hands. "What does it say?" he asked, sitting beside her. She read softly, "Dear Dad, I don't know if you'll ever read this, but if you do, I want you to know that I forgive you. They taught me here that holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. And I don't want to live with poison anymore." Eduardo looked at his daughter. "Do you see yourself in those words?" "More than you know," she replied. "Sometimes I think I was born to help others find what I found." The wind blew gently. The hotel lights sparkled like stars on the ground. Carmen joined them with 3 cups of hot tea. "What do you do when guests can't reconcile?" Eduardo asked. Carmen gave a sad smile. "I hug them. I tell them not all wounds heal at the same pace, but even scars can stop hurting if you take care of them." Sophia looked at them both. "Do you know what's the most beautiful part of all this?" "What?" they asked together. "That this house was built from the ruins of what almost destroyed us. And yet, here we are." That anniversary of the reunion came quietly, without fanfare, but with an indescribable emotional weight. Eduardo decided to mark the date in a special way, by organizing a private dinner for the 3 of them, at the same restaurant where it all began. La Gastronomica reserved their table by the window. Sophia entered holding her parents' hands, wearing a simple dress and a radiant expression. The waiters glanced discreetly. Rumors had circulated for years, but no one knew the full story. Seated, they toasted with red wine. Eduardo raised his glass. "Here, where everything began, where a single phrase changed our destiny. My mother has a ring just like yours. I want to toast to the exact moment life decided to give us another chance." Carmen raised her. "To the rings that find each other again, and to stories that deserve new beginnings." Sophia looked at them warmly. "And to daughters who learn that forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's freedom. They ate slowly, without hurry. Every gesture was a silent tribute to time regained. Every glance, a bridge built over the abyss of the past. At the end of the evening, as they stepped outside into the night, Eduardo looked up at the sky. Do you think all of this was destiny? Sophia replied, maybe, or maybe it was just love. Love that refused to give. A year later, Sophia published a book. She titled it Three Rings. In it, she narrated her story from the most intimate point of view, that of a daughter who discovered her origins by accident, a young woman who learned to love her parents, not for who they had been, but for who they chose to become. The book became an unexpected success, not because of fame, but because of what it stirred in those who read it. Letters poured into the foundation weekly, people sharing stories of abandonment, reunion, and redemption. Sophia replied to each one with a handwritten line, if love still lives in your memory, it's not too late to come home. Carmen, eyes full of tears, told her one afternoon, your story is helping others heal. That's more powerful than any hotel. Eduardo, for his part, no longer saw himself as a tycoon. He saw a man who had lost everything and had regained it in the most unexpected way. In a television interview, a journalist asked, what did you learn from all this, Mr. Mendoza? He smiled and answered, sometimes fate breaks us, so we can see where the missing pieces were. Sophia, Carmen, and Eduardo continued writing their story day by day, no longer with fear, no longer with silence, but with truth, with love, and the certainty that no matter how long the night, the sun always rises.